All right, so today we are going to be talking about cortisol rhythms. What's normal? What is abnormal? So there are, in short, 5 different rhythms that we're going to talk about. 1 is the norm. 2 is what I like to refer to as the entrepreneurial spirit award cortisol level. Then we have 2 types of double dippers, and last but not least we have the flatliner, which is pretty self-explanatory but has some unfortunate repercussions in terms of diagnosis and treatment. So let's get started. Ultimately, your cortisol levels, as most of you guys know, are very important for a whole slew of reasons. Cortisol is usually given a bad rep as being your stress hormone and causing nothing but havoc on your system. However, that could not be further from the truth. Trust me when I say, when your cortisol levels are not functioning optimally, as you will see, you really feel it. So cortisol is something that you need in your life, but you just need it in the right dose at the right time. So if things are functioning optimally, it is a diurnal rhythm, which means that it is supposed to be high at one point during the day and low at another point in the day. Those 2 points are roughly 6 or 7 a.m. and about midnight is the ultimate low dipping point. But getting from A to B means gradually dropping off such that you can fall asleep easily, and then you kind of zen out, you get in that awesome sleep space, and then your cortisol levels start to build up again, and you wake up again the following morning with a cortisol spike. So in theory, we shouldn't need our alarms to wake up. Our cortisol should actually be the hormone responsible for waking us naturally in the morning, and if it does that, then we feel awesome and refreshed and we can get on with our days. So as you can see already, you're probably like, yeah, it doesn't work like that for me, Kate. So I'm going to give you or talk about 4 different cortisol curves that I see commonly in practice when we test the cortisol hormone. So one example is what I like to refer to as the entrepreneurial spirit award cortisol curve. And what this looks like when I get the lab testing back is that this person is basically bottomed out on waking. So that is to say that if their alarm didn't jolt them awake at 6 or 7 or 8 a.m., they would probably sleep till 10 or 11 in the morning if they could. So their cortisol level is low. It starts to gradually increase around dinner time only. And then in the evening, they are like high functioning. They're getting everything done. They're just like go, 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 go. Their brain starts going. Everything starts functioning on like high alert. They can't get to sleep, so they just keep pushing through. It causes issues with morning, almost like a depressive type of state in the morning sometimes, and then this evening energy burst where they are totally tired but wired. So they just can't, their systems can't settle, they can't get to sleep at a normal hour, so they end up going to bed at 1 or 2 a.m., sometimes even 3 a.m., and then the cortisol level never really has that time, so you're low, you spike late, and then you kind of stay high until, you might be peaking at 12 a.m. when you're supposed to be bottoming out. So it's literally the cortisol curve at that point is flipped on its head. And then it needs some time to kind of recover. So that's where you get into this 2 a.m. kind of sleep pattern. And then it doesn't have time to actually pick up before you need to wake up again. So that can be very problematic for people. The next example is are the double dippers that I'm going to talk about. So these people have 2 dips in their cortisol curve. The first is somebody who has a late afternoon dip. So this is somebody who has issues with brain fog and fatigue, poor concentration, sugar cravings. They need that afternoon coffee break or else they won't make it, or they feel that they won't make it. So if that is you, then that is likely an issue not only with blood sugar, unfortunately, but I often see it translating and extending into an issue with cortisol. So they have a lower than average, generally, cortisol on waking, and then it it nearly bottoms out in that late afternoon period, recovers slightly just after dinner, but never really fully often to the optimal levels, and then bottoms out again at 12 midnight, which is pretty typical. And then recovers, but not to the same degree that it maybe should for them to feel really refreshed on waking. So that's the second type of, I'll call it cortisol personality, that I see in practice. The second type of double dipper is somebody who has a late morning crash. So typically these people have a close to normal cortisol level in the morning, but it just bottoms out really quickly. So in those these are people who are like, if I don't have a coffee before that lunch meeting, somebody might get hurt. So these are people who are hitting that 11 o'clock hour, sometimes even 10:30 hour, and they're like, whoa, again, trouble focusing, poor concentration, issues with fatigue, getting those caffeine cravings, and then things recover, and they have part of this kind of entrepreneurial spike that happens in the evening. So they will have a spike 7, 8, sometimes 8, 9 o'clock, where they're feeling really productive and they just want to go. But as soon as that drops off, they're done. Okay, so these people, instead of kind of riding this high cortisol curve, like the entrepreneurial spirit award cortisol curve, they have this boost of energy after dinner at some point, and then they just fall off and they have to go to bed because their cortisol level is starting to decrease and they're feeling the urge to go to bed. That being said, it is often still a challenge for them to get to sleep. So even though they might actually sleep okay, falling asleep is often a struggle for them because their mind is still kind of racing. And that is a symptom of having a cortisol level that is still slightly higher than optimal in those late evening hours, even though it's not as high as we see in the entrepreneurial example. And then last but not least, we have people who have what I call just a flatline cortisol level. So I get their lab results back and their cortisol curve more or less just looks like this, or it just kind of goes like this. Okay. It's usually diurnal. That's the upside, is that it does only have the two, like the one high and the one low. But ultimately, how this can manifest is in feelings of depression and just lack of kind of spunk and go-get-em attitude because you're always tired. You feel generally low and drained throughout the day. And what I often see in practice is that people will come in with a diagnosis already of something like depression or some other mood disorder. And I will talk to them further about their symptoms and about how this affects their life. And I kind of start to look at this cortisol level and think, we should probably test for this just to see where you're at. And sure enough, the results come back as essentially flatlined. And it's frustrating for both myself and the patient because this patient sometimes has been being treated by, with traditional pharmaceutical medicine. And what's been treated is serotonin dysregulation, when in fact serotonin is quite all right. It's doing its job, but cortisol is kind of manifesting with a similar set of symptoms that are leading us to believe that you have a mood disorder when in fact it is this cortisol hormone that requires support and not serotonin. So that is frustrating for sure, and something that I'm always conscious of and watching for. So I just wanted to give you guys some information about what type of cortisol rhythms I'm used to seeing. There are many, many, many variations of this. And as you can see, they all affect us in different ways in terms of how we operate in our day-to-day lives. That being said, we don't need to suffer with these impairments ultimately that are caused by our cortisol levels being off. So there are many, many things that we can do. And so if you are falling into one of these 4 categories and not into that lovely 5th awesome diurnal spike in the morning, drop off by midnight thing, then we need to talk. So let's schedule a follow-up and let's do some testing if testing needs to be done, and let's treat it and get you feeling good and performing.